All right. Welcome everybody. Happy Thursday to the Mobile Market Coalition's webinar series. This week, today we're covering inventory management for nutrition on your mobile market. I see a lot of familiar faces here today, and that's great. But for those of you who are new to the Mobile Market Coalition, I just wanted to share. Our Mobile Market Coalition is a national network of mobile market operators and stakeholders focused on advancing mobile markets as equitable solutions for a resilient food system where everyone has access to healthy foods. We are a membership-based organization led by an advisory board of mobile market operators and facilitated by our team here at the University of Buffalo. If you're interested in learning more or getting involved, you are welcome to visit mobilemarketcoalition.org or reach out to us at contact us at mobilemarketcoalition.org. Our email address, I will drop both of those in the chat here in a minute so you don't have to memorize them. We've got two great speakers today. One of them sounds like they're having some tech. Oh, there they are. So we've got two great speakers today from up in sunny Minnesota to present on our topic. Together, they've developed a guide and tool for managing mobile market inventory with nutrition in mind. I think especially with a focus on those who carry a broader range than just fruits and vegetables, but I think it's relevant for all of us. We'll get the perspective both from the developer of the tool, Melissa Horning, who's here today, and a mobile market operator who uses this guide and help provide some of the information to create it, Steph Wagner with the food group. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to the group here in a minute, but I do have just a couple of brief announcements before I stop sharing and let them share. We're recording this webinar, and over the next couple of business days, we'll share it out to everyone who's registered. That is those of you in the room, obviously, as well as any additional resources and links to the actual guide that Melissa is going to be talking about today. So you'll have access to all of that here within the next couple of days. If you have any questions or comments for either Melissa or Steph as they present, I'll ask you to please drop them in the chat or save them towards the end of our time together. We'll save plenty of time, it sounds like, at the end, and I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. So we'll get our questions answered. In the meantime, I think you are all, thankfully, you are all already muted. And so please just make sure you keep your microphones muted so we can limit disruptions. Last, registration is still open for both our in-person and virtual attendance to the annual Mobile Market Summit. It is a big part of the kind of momentum that we build as a network, the information that we share, and how we build resilience within this network. We've got just such an awesome lineup of speakers and events lined up. It is so fun. So if you haven't yet, I hope you'll consider checking out our website and read more about it and consider joining us virtually or in Orlando this year on March 19th and 20th. I'll put a link to that in the chat as well. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and hand it over to Melissa and Steph.
Thanks, Sam. I'm going to get my screen shared here for y'all. Can I have a thumbs up that it's working? Thanks, Chris. So thank you all for taking the time to join our webinar. There is a lot going on in the world. And as such, Steph and I have planned to keep our conversation efficient and focused, allow time for question and answers, and still finish early. So that's a tall order. So we'll just keep right on going here. So with that, we'll start with introductions. We'll have an overview of the Twin Cities mobile market, just so you're familiar with the mobile market that these guidances were created for, as well as an overview of the guidance themselves, as well as some practical uses sort of in the theoretical sense, but actually like how does the Twin Cities mobile market use them? And then again, time for question and answers. So with that, Steph and I have been working together now for this is going on 4 years, Steph. But I have actually worked with the mobile market for nearly a decade. And the way I found myself into this space is because I was a public health nurse. So my name is Melissa Horning, and I'm a public health nurse. I've worked in the community for a long time. And no matter where I was working as a nurse, my clients were concerned with accessing food, affording food, getting their kids to eat it. And so like my practice was always revolving around food. And so when I moved into the research space, I knew that food was a big part of what I needed to do or work within. But I also knew that I couldn't do my work without community, because in my life as a public health nurse, if I didn't work with community, I wasn't doing my job well. And so I knew that my research needed to involve community too. And so as I was like starting out as a fledgling researcher, I wanted to seek a partner. And so I found the Twin Cities Mobile Market at that point in time. And so that was a long time ago now, but it allows me to continue the work that my clients were really focused in on when I was in practice. And so that's kind of what brings me to this space. I'm now an associate professor at the School of Nursing at the University of Minnesota. And it's a real joy and pleasure to be able to work with Steph. So Steph, do you want to introduce yourself now?
Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for joining us. I will reinforce Sam's plug for the conference next month. I hope to see some of you there. My name is Stephanie Wagner. I am the Associate Director of Programs at the Food Group. I come to this space after working in a variety of settings, direct service in the Twin Cities area, mainly in Minneapolis. But the food group where I work now and have for the last 4 years is a food equity organization working across the food system from land access. We're the only independent food bank in the state, and I oversee two unique mobile market programs. Twin Cities Mobile Market, which we're going to focus on today, and then also a program called Fair for All. So Twin Cities Mobile Market came to the food group around 5 years ago, but was founded by another local nonprofit here in actually our capital of St. Paul. Equity was absolutely at the core. I think that's a driver for a lot of us, knowing that food access is targeting certain communities at higher proportion than others. So for Twin Cities Mobile Market, we are really focusing on serving communities that are experiencing that low to no food access, but also coupled with living with a low income. Our program model and decisions are very much based on community feedback, the engagement we have that stems both from that one-on-one conversations that we're having with people on a daily basis, but also with partners and other key leaders that are helping inform what they're seeing and hearing the need is. We like to say we are affordable, accessible, and nutritious. And sometimes that's hard to know how to define. Thanks to Melissa, she's helped us a lot in that regard, both our affordable and nutritious portions of things that we say all the time. So I hope this is helpful for some of the other markets out there. So right now, Twin Cities Mobile Market operates two brand new retrofitted school buses. We are serving 28 communities. You can see that on the map, those little like maroonish bus icons. Usually stops are about an hour long. And what is unique about us is that we provide groceries from all 5 food groups. We like to specialize in fresh produce, knowing that a lot of people don't have access to that, especially at an affordable price. And at other local groceries, as soon as you get on the bus, that is what you're greeted with, is that fresh produce. Next slide.
Oh, this is me now, huh? And so how like sort of like our research partnership came to be, and like we talk about this just because like there's always opportunities for collaboration. And so but like how do you get to the point like where you like have somebody that like you can call a partner, so like Steph and I. And so again, the partnership, as I alluded to in my intro, like began a long time ago, but it really started with shared goals and decision making and transparency of like what the needs were. And the real importance was like we didn't want to do harm. The founding director was very clear that like the goal of the mobile market was to improve food access for folks. And so like research is often seen as a barrier for many. And so she didn't want research to be another barrier to accessing food. And so we started out really small. We were really building a relationship. And those smaller projects grew. We got a USDA grant. But the grant was one that she wanted to apply for as like for the market, but it had a research component. And so it was a really nice way where we could like sort of solidify some of our smaller projects into something bigger. And that's led us to where we are today. And Steph wanted me to like make an aside. So this whole slide is an aside. Should you want to partner, engage with a university or a college in your area, like please reach out. Like I can say from like the academic side of things, like we're not scary people, or at least generally speaking. Like I have bananas hanging from my ceiling. See, bananas. Um, and like people want to be able to help community. And I think the key is just finding the right type of partner. And so like what type of partnership are you looking for? Is it research? Is it program evaluation? Is it implementing some evidence-based practices in your market? Is it educational opportunities for students or service learning activities? And then once you think about like what that partnership would be or what you'd want as your like sort of like end goal, then it's like figuring out within that college or university what schools or departments might be good fit. So I, am housed in nursing, there's nutrition, there's public health, there's social work, there's psychology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And every university and college labels them a little differently. But figuring out like, okay, so where's that potential spot? And then you basically look for people that look interesting and look like they might be fun to work with. And so you can look at websites to sort of see like, is there any words on their profiles that might indicate that they're a good partner? And so like community engagement, community-based participatory research, community engaged research, like outreach in the community, those types of things like usually signify like somebody that's wanting to work with you as a partner versus somebody that wants to like sort of utilize your space as like something that they can do for or do on. And so those words can be kind of helpful. And sometimes colleges and universities don't have like individual faculty pages. And so then you can just look for somebody that's leading a department and say, hey, this is my organization, what we're doing. And I think we might be able to like potentially collaborate on a few things. Is there anyone in your department that might be interested? And that's another way where you can kind of find folks. And so should you want to partner, that's the aside. But then getting back to sort of where we are. So like we kind of worked our way up to what is actually a pretty big research study that's evaluating the impact of the Twin Cities mobile market, like Steph mentioned, is full service. So kind of meeting all the dietary needs. And we're testing for the impact on dietary quality and food insecurity, as well as sort of like how it might shift the number of servings of fruits and vegetables that are brought into the home. And so in the space of this larger study, as we're like bringing the market to 12 new sites and sort of doing our research thing, Steph and I were having conversations early on about like, what else can my team do to help sort of your group and your organization, you do your jobs. And we kept coming up with these questions, as Steph alluded to at the beginning, of like, what does nutritious actually mean? And what other food options might be out there, and what should we be looking at when we're considering items to stock or for our inventory. And so I was like, oh, I think that's something that like my team can help with. And in the conversations that we had, Steph really, reiterated how like whatever we create, it needs to be really flexible, right? Because we've got to meet customers' needs. We've got to keep an eye on affordability. We need to not place value judgments and not moralize sort of decisions of like good and bad or right or wrong, but rather just like sort of looking at foods with sort of an eye to the nutrient profiles of them. And so like, how do you do that all in concert and sort of holistically? And so that's sort of like the task that my team took on. And so we developed what we call the nutrition stocking guidance. And so it was developed here at the University of Minnesota. I'm the registered nurse on the team. And then I have two fantastic colleagues that are registered dietitians, Dr. Lisa Harnack and Dr. Melissa Laska. And so the three of us sort of like put our heads together along with the rest of the research team. And like we worked from guidance that's available for charitable food organizations as well as for small grocery stores. And now mobile markets are really neither of those, but they're both similar to those. And so we wanted guidance that would be like really user-friendly for mobile markets. And so that's what we aimed to develop. So we've got a reference guide for all major food categories, and the stocking guidance has nutritional recommendations at 3 tiers. So green, which we're recommending is most of the products in the market, but again, most gets to be determined by the organization and their needs and their mission and their values. Yellow would be less than half of the products, and red would be trying to minimize those products on the inventory. Again, all of them are fine, and like all diets can handle all foods in sort of like the right quantities. But this is just a sort of a snapshot guidance of like how you could potentially sort of build your inventory list in a way that like promotes that nutritional purchase through like behavioral nudging, but still really values customer autonomy and respects their needs and values. And so the recommendations for those nutritional tiers are based on 4 nutrients on the facts panel. And those are saturated fat, sodium, dietary fiber, and added sugar. And so each of the categories in our tool, which is like 2 pages total, has like sort of like a header, and then it like describes what that looks like. And so for fruits and vegetables, like it provides guidance like look for fresh, canned, or frozen without added sugar, sauces, or syrups. And then it actually recommends like the number of varieties for both fruits or vegetables. Again, with that focus of like, about most being fresh. And then it also is providing, consider limiting the juice. And then the reality is like for fruits and vegetables, for everything that's fresh, it doesn't come with a nutrition facts panel. So it's like actually already in, right? We know that nothing is getting added in terms of sodium or added sugar. And the fiber content of fruits and vegetables is great, which is why it's never sort of like this like limiting factor on the guide. But when we're thinking about frozen or canned or dried fruits and vegetables, that's where you can sometimes get some of these other additives added in. And so this again is just helping you sort of look through like, hey, how do our dried fruits look, or, our canned goods look? Should you carry those items on your mobile market? And then just sort of for context, again, Steph mentioned this, like they carry about 150 to 175 different items. And so like the varieties that like we suggested were like, 6 varieties of fruit, 8 varieties of vegetables. Like those were based on like the overall quantity of items that they were carrying at that time. And so again, you could adjust that proportionally for your own mobile market should you, choose to like think that that's important to your mission and vision. And then as just a second example, and like I've got them all here, so like you could look at them, but I will also just provide you links. In fact, Chris can put links in the chat at any point to the actual tool, because then you could see it all at once at a glance. But again, like this one is just describing like how you could look for grains, and grains can be really confusing in terms of their labeling, just because like things can say made with whole grain, but then it's actually not very much whole grain. And so there's just guidance on like how you could look for things that like would signify that like it has a higher nutrient like composition, or like, a more nutrient dense composition. And then also then that tiering categories again of saturated fat, sodium, added sugar, and dietary fiber. And if you kind of look at just like the green line of like most of the grains should sort of fall into this threshold, you can see that like saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar are all around 10. Those are nutrients or things. Like added sugar isn't really a nutrient because we don't need it, but those are all things that like we can have. We just want to have in moderation. And then dietary fiber is actually really good for our bodies in a variety of different ways. And so that one's like at or above 10. So it's just kind of like a nice rule of thumb. You can kind of look for like 10 to 12 on saturated fat, sodium, and added sugar. And then dietary fiber is sort of, 10 or above. And then you can kind of see how the yellow and the red tiers look. So again, we've got this for all the different categories, from protein, dairy, and non-dairy alternatives, mixed dishes and snacks, which includes frozen meals, soups and stews, as well as sort of like snacks, and then beverages and desserts and condiments and cooking staples. So, as we were sort of going through this, like our thought was like this could be a nice self-assessment tool where you could use it once to kind of get a lay of the land, like what does our inventory look like? Or you could use it over time to kind of monitor, like, are we sticking true to the inventory sort of shopping environment that we'd like to provide for our customers? It could be potentially used as a guide for setting up a new stocking approach or responding to customer requests. Or a reference for sourcing staff when choosing products. Like if you have a couple of like different types of, let's say, yogurt available at like a price that seems right for customers. Like the customers seem to think that like both are pretty good options. It's meeting sort of the needs on a variety of different levels, and you can source it. Like you could see like, oh, this one falls in the red category, this one falls in yellow. And then you could consider like, is that a useful way to like shift the shopping environment to a slightly more nutrient dense environment. And it also could just be used as a tool to discuss what is our organizational goals and priorities on the stocking and the inventory that we want to carry. And so highly flexible, highly adaptable, based on like sort of the needs and priorities of organizations. And at least that's how we intended it to be. But I think best to hear from Steph, who's actually used it in real life, on her experience.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. This tool has been useful in a lot of ways, along with providing some hope for some ideas of how we can address, look at, change up our inventory moving forward. So, number one, knowing the mix of products we have. Again, language we use organization wide is that we focus on offering nutritious foods, and in not just saying that in language, but having some actual data to lean on, feels good after, you're touting these phrases time and time again. We're always looking for how to tell our story, new ways, things to highlight, what will be important for funders, knowing that a lot of us are not generating enough revenue on our own. We do the markets that I oversee are significantly dependent on grant funds. So being able to have this data to use when applying or reporting for grants has been very useful. We hear all the time from people about things that they may want on the bus. Again, we have some limited space. We have a lot of variety, and having that nutritious component, and knowing what else there is as far as access in neighborhoods helps talk about how and why we make our inventory decisions. And then also, we certainly have foods in that red category, and then being mindful about where those are on the bus, not having them as soon as you walk on, right at eye level, easy to grab, but maybe tucking them a little bit lower so somebody needs to bend down a bit to find those. Next slide. Thank you. We hear from people that they may want a certain item, and instead of just automatically bringing it on the bus, or even when we hear staff talk about, Melissa brought up yogurt, for example, we have this very sugary yogurt, and instead of taking that away and imparting maybe something in that yellow or green category, could we get something from that yellow or green category in addition to that red category item, to sort of balance out those offerings has been helpful. And then again, for our sourcing staff, the options are limitless when some of our sourcing is from a national distributor. Being able to go to that guide and sort of narrow down options to be looking at instead of filtering through hundreds of pages on that wholesaler's website has been useful as well.
So our final thoughts are that should any of it be interesting to you, you can access it online for free. You can customize it if you want like a Word doc version. I'm pretty sure we've got that as well, but the Digital Conservancy where it's currently hosted only does PDFs. So those are the links that Chris has put into the chat. And so you can access those anytime. And Sam has promised that it's coming soon to the Mobile Market Coalition Toolkit. And so you can also potentially access it that way as well in the near future, right, Sam? Awesome. And then the QR code actually will take you to it right now also, should you scan the QR code. But with that, I do have to acknowledge that our trial is funded by the National Institute of Nursing Research, but we are responsible for this presentation. And we thank you for your time, and we invite any questions that you have. And I'll stop sharing my screen so we can see each other.
Thanks, Melissa. Oh, go ahead, Lucia.
Sorry, I was going to say, I can't figure out how to raise my hand. It's just saying something weird, but thank you so much for your presentation. So can you talk a little bit more about, I guess I'm just thinking about, oh my gosh, these are so many products compared to what we're used to doing, which is not a lot. Like what your backup storage looks like, or like how many vehicles you're keeping stocked, or just a little bit about more that like logistical of trying to keep so many products in stock, and how you handle that when you're out in the market and somebody might buy a bunch of something and then you're totally, just curious.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer that felt like it addresses everything. So we try. So as I had said earlier on, we are a food bank. So we have a gigantic warehouse. So we have infrastructure. We also can add on orders to our food bank side of things, so they can absorb some of our freight costs. But we have dedicated coolers, freezers, and dry space in our warehouse just for the mobile market. It is hugely laborious when you're talking about having 175 items and needing to stock every day for what had sold the previous day. It takes a long time. You have to pick all those items and then you have to physically get them onto the bus. We have not figured out an efficient way. I'm mainly thinking about staff safety, and then also time efficiency. That's lower down on the rung of importance, but still has merit in considering. Because the bus is only so large, we are in a suburb west of the Twin Cities area. We're loading one time a day. So we load in the morning and then we go out to 3 to 5 stops a day. And sometimes by that fourth, fifth stop, our inventory is running pretty low. Because of that, we do have limits on certain items. It's interesting. We have really great eggs on our bus. They're local, they're organic. They're $2.50, which you cannot find anywhere. We have had limits on those for a long time, and I just heard some national retailers are doing the same. I'm like, we're not the only ones. So we do put limits, milk, some basic items that we want to make sure we have at those later stops. People do have feelings about that from time to time, and if there's time and space to be able to articulate the rationale for why, that can be a little bit more digestible. I hope I answered most of your questions.
Yes,
I'm
thank
gonna
you.
let you go ahead. Follow up. Yeah. Did you want to follow up?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm on the team at the University of Minnesota. I'm the project manager for our study, but I'm bringing up a question coming up out of the chat here, Steph. They were wondering how many customers participate in the mobile market each month or annually, and how do you assess target communities, which we might need a little bit more information about what you mean by that. But maybe you can start with the first one about customer participation. I was just pulling up your numbers if it's helpful.
Thanks. I was just gonna pull up the numbers if you have them, Chris.
I
Go
do.
ahead.
In 2020, so one of the other ways that we partner is that because our study monitors our participants' use of the mobile market using the Twin Cities mobile market's point of sale system, we also can quite easily generate summaries across all sites, even ones that are not research sites. So For 2024, which was when we last did this summary for you, for you, Steph, we saw that there were sales transactions of 14,800 with a monthly average of about 1,200 sales a month. And in general, they're seeing about 13 to 15 people per stop per week. So if it's got 3 to 4 stops, they're seeing probably anywhere from 45 to 60 people in a day.
So thank you, Chris. My OneDrive is not working, so I can't even pull up my data. So thanks, Chris, to the rescue. One thing I will say is that not all steps, so Chris was sharing averages there. So we have some lower performing sites, so maybe 1 to 4 people per stop, but we're at that location for strategic reasons within our community, and then other locations where we're seeing 30 people shop in an hour. So it really does vary from community to community.
And then they also asked, how do you assess target communities?
Sure. So that can happen in a variety of ways. Historically, we have onboarded new locations when they have sought us out. So they are asking, advocating for their community, stating that there is low or no food access. Can we please come? The study that we have needed to onboard 12 new locations had some parameters that we needed to follow. One being at least half a mile from a full service grocery, defining that, it's tricky at times, a half mile from an existing location. So that has narrowed some options down. Also communities where people are living with a low income. I have used the USDA Food Access Atlas as a way to narrow down communities that I wanted to do some more research in, to sort of diversify our service map, if that makes sense. So those are some of the ways it really changes from site to site, truthfully.
And you also are meeting with people and talking with them about their interest and all of those things too. So
Yeah.
it's multifaceted stuff.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up.
You do a ton of work.
Yes, we are not just, showing up at a location. We are getting buy-in from property management. We are hosting community meetings to make sure that the community we are targeting actually is interested. So sharing our inventory, our prices, and being very clear that we will only come if this feels like something you want and need in your space.
Steph, I hate to poke a question at you, but there's another question in the chat. It says, I appreciate the guidance document. How do you address customer preferences like familiar foods and introducing more nutritional foods, which might fall into the green and yellow categories? When using this guidance, do you see an increase in customer satisfaction and new food selections, as well as purchases and increased profits?
Gosh, I wish I could tell you a clear answer. I don't think I know the answer. As far as familiar foods, so we have a tracker on the bus, so we are always taking requests for items. As every market knows, there is limited space for what we can have. So in addition to writing down requests, we also do little tallies or hash marks. So if everybody is asking for this one item and it is like as red can be, we will still stock it. We are trying to be responsive to community requests and at the same time providing nutritious options, and both of those exist sometimes side by side.
Steph, do you mind if I add in a little bit too? Our team has been, as part of the research study, conducting some qualitative interviews with participants in our study who have either become high adopters of the mobile market or low adopters that in that they didn't end up shopping there. They thought they would, but they didn't. And what we hear actually a lot from folks who become high adopters is that they actually kind of like that it makes it easy, that they know there's not going to be chips and soda, and they actually like that it maybe pushes them towards nutritional options, or if they want a frozen meal, they feel a little bit more comfortable about whatever it is that the mobile market has chosen. And on the flip side, we do have some folks who we've interviewed over the last couple of years who have said, I don't shop there because it doesn't have, they should, or if they stocked more junk food, I would be happy to, and using those words, if they stocked more chips and soda, I would shop there more. And so, but I think Steph has articulated really well over the years that you're trying to fill a gap. And if there's lots of places in many of the neighborhoods where the mobile market goes to, which offer some of these lower nutritional
Energy dense,
energy dense foods. And so they're trying to provide and fill that gap. And so I just thought I'd provide that, though. It's always very interesting to talk with people where they say they like shopping at the bus because it helps them be focused.
Well, thanks, Sal. These are great questions. We can keep them coming. We do have a few more minutes. I'll pause and see if anybody has more questions or comments. Otherwise, we don't have to go for a full hour.
I did put the link to the nutrition stacking guidance in the chat. So if you're looking for that, along with Melissa's email address, in case you're looking to have an editable version of the document to customize in any way for your site.
Can you drop Steph's email in too, Chris? Because she's actually the guru of gurus. I just am her sidekick.
All right, well, Melissa, Steph, Chris, thank you all so much for sharing about this tool and how it came about and how we can incorporate it into our own mobile market work. Those of you who are registered will most certainly get an email in the coming days with some of the links that are in the chat, as well as a link to this recording. We put our webinars up on YouTube, so look forward to that. Feel free to share it around once it's out. I appreciate you all taking the time to join us today and be a part of the conversation. And again, big special thanks to Melissa, Steph, Chris for putting in the hard work on this and sharing it with the group. I hope everyone has a good rest of your day and week. And again, I hope to see so many of your smiling faces in Orlando in about a month. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.